Hi, and welcome to another month of difficult days for most of us as we continue with the COVID pandemic. It's kind of like we're in a crucible, and our marriages, our lives are into the fire and they're being tested. And what's surfacing? How's your love surfacing? Is your marriage growing in love, or are the impurities coming to the surfaces? Those impurities that Becky talked about a month ago. John Gottman's four horsemen of criticism, and then defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. Is your marriage growing in love, or is it growing in conflict? Of course, we all know Jesus' commandment in the New Testament to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. You know, it's what we are called for. The greatest calling that we have is to grow in love and be in giving and receiving love. It's what we are hardwired to do. We're created in God's image. He's God of love. We're created to love. And when things are stressful, it's like that love is being tested, isn't it? And that's what we're experiencing right now, the challenge in growing in love when things are really, really difficult. And when you think of where you're at right now, how are you being tested as this virus continues? Might you be tested with that basic fear that you'll get sick, you'll catch the virus, and you'll die? I think that's underneath everybody's concern, is that stress that we're all dealing with. But then on top of that, maybe you're dealing with the stress of work or not working. How many of you have lost your jobs during this time? Or if this keeps going, you could see yourself losing your job. And might that be pretty scary? Or maybe if you even have businesses, you're going to be laying off people. So you're confronted by those factors, those stresses in your life. Maybe you're both working from home. Oh my goodness. And the challenge of that, especially if you've been having young kids, you've had to be their teacher, you've had to be their parent, and you've had to do work at the same time. Oh my goodness, how stressful that must have been. Or maybe you have older kids and they're just chomping at the bit to get out, and maybe they've already got out, and you don't feel safe with them doing their thing. Or you've got elderly parents that are in nursing homes and you're concerned about them. Imagine some of you are dealing with all that kind of stuff. What a ton of stress on your life. And how are you handling that personally? How is your marriage handling that? Might you be growing in love, or might you be growing in conflict? Certainly, one of the things Cheryl and I experienced early on in this virus is the conflict of us thinking differently about this. I mean, Cheryl was more cautious. She had her antenna out, and she was concerned, and she wanted me to stay home. She didn't want me to go into the office, and I wanted to go into the office. The at-home stay had not been, the law had not been passed that we had to stay home. So I was there, I was at the office, and we fought about that. And what was going on? We were fighting about being right. Being right. Are you aware of your need to be right, and you're holding on to your right instead of being loved? One of the things I think of is when we hold on to being right, we're clenching our fist. I invite you to just clench your fist. Feel what that looks like. That's you being right. Open up your fist. Your hands. Open the hands. That's you being love. You can't be both right and be loving at the same time. One of the things I've always preached about is the biggest barrier to loving is our need to be right. You can't be both right and loving at the same time. In fact, it's the commandment in the New Testament that Jesus says that we all disobey. And that commandment is found in Matthew 7, verse 1. Do not judge. Do not judge. It's the antithesis of being loving. It takes us all the way back to the very beginning when Adam and Eve were walking in the garden with God in a love relationship. They were growing in love. They were living the abundant life. And Satan tested them. He tempted them to need to have more, need to have wisdom. need to eat of that tree in the middle of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There wasn't enough for them. They needed to have more. And so they ate of that. And from then on, that's what we've been doing, judging good and evil. And might that be a big barrier of what gets in the way of you being able to love well? I needed to let go of my need to be right in order to grow and love Cheryl well. One of the things I had to do, or I chose to do, is wear a mask when I was out. Didn't fight overtly much about that, but internally, as I didn't want to wear a mask, kind of didn't like how it looked, didn't look so manly to wear a mask. I was reminded of watching one of the TV news one night and a man shouting, "I have a right. No one can make me wear a mask." And I remember seeing that and goes, yeah, he's holding on to his right, but maybe he's not being very loving. He's not loving his family. He's not loving his neighbor very well. So I let go of that, wore gloves, and especially if I was out, I came home and told Cheryl a little bit about what was going on, how was I maintaining safety, and as a result, she felt safe. Might you need to do that, might you need to let go of what you're holding on to, and in order for you to be loving. And how do we do that? One of the ways we do that is, I have a little acronym here for you, and that is LUV. LUV. Listen, understand, and validate. First, the challenge is to listen. One of the things Gottman has said in his research about couples who are masters at marriage is they create a space, daily space, to create a stress-reducing conversation. And how much more do we need that in today's pandemic? We need to be having a dialogue with each other, and we need to download our concerns, download our fear, download our sadness, download our anger about what's going on in today's world. And can you listen to your spouse as he or she downloads? That's what Jesus did. He listens. That's what he encourages. When I think of Philippians, when Jesus invites us, or the Apostle Paul writes about us casting our anxiety, sharing our anxiety to him, bringing them as prayers and petitions. Jesus is inviting us to download our fears. And what's he promised? The peace that passes understanding. May not take care of all the fears, but it'll help us, and it'll help us, give us peace. How are you doing? Are you able to download those fears, your anger, your sadness? And is your spouse listening? Are you a listener to your spouse? I love one of Gottman's phrases. He says, "My wife is in trouble, the world stops, and I listen." Can we do that? Can we do that more? But it's really hard, because imagine yourself listening, and all of a sudden your spouse is angry. And it's like, oh, not okay to be angry. And so you get defensive. Or your spouse is a little critical. Oh, not okay to be critical. So you want to hold on. You want to correct. You want to jump in. That's not being loving. Your spouse isn't going to feel loved if you defend and criticize. Can you stay open and listen? So how good are you at listening? Are you able to let go of your need to be right so you can listen? One more step. Or the next step, rather, is to seek first to understand. That's the you. Understand. What a great quote from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. He says, seek first to understand. On top of your listening, are you able to understand your spouse's view? Understand your spouse's perspective? Understand his or her need to download the fear, the anger. To get that beneath the anger is probably scare or sadness. Oh my goodness, what's been lost? Marriages, vacations, funerals. I saw a funeral procession for the first time, a hearse and 2 cars. That was it. Oh my gosh, how sad. And that's the kind of stuff that's going on. Or underneath are the needs of those feelings. Maybe you related last week to Josh Hook's talk about the Enneagram, and he identified needs underneath that. Can you hear the needs of each other? One of the pictures of needs that I really like to use is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The bottom base of that need is the need for safety. And oh my goodness, how that's being tested today. The safety, your physical safety, the safety of you being able to provide for your families, that's all getting shaken. And that's the underlying need. Can you hear the safety need that's coming out from your spouse? How about the need for intimacy and connection? Maybe your spouse is feeling alone. Maybe your spouse feels the need for comfort, for you to be alongside. Can you do that? Can you understand that? And on top of that need is the need for esteem, need for value. Maybe you're doing the best you can, working as hard as you can, and you need to hear that you're valuable and you need affirmation. Are you able to understand what's underneath there for your spouse? That's what Jesus did. I mean, oh my goodness, if anybody had the right to hold on to being right, it was Jesus. Here he was in the Trinity with the Father, but Philippians says he did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself. He emptied himself, becoming human. He did get into our shoes. He does understand us. And might we be like Jesus and understand our spouse? The last part is to validate. Listen, you understand, B, validate. How we long for this, don't we? To be heard, to be understood, to be accepted or validated. And validating may be as easy as just saying, I get it. I get how scary that must be for you. Or I get how that must be, you must feel really unsafe and you want safety. Yeah, to be able to get that and to do one more thing. As Andy Stanley, one of my favorite preachers, says about love, can you make love a verb? A verb. Can you put that into action? Can you do just more than get it, listen, understand, but what might you do to make your spouse feel more loved? Is there something you can do? Of course, one of the things that for me, I needed to let go. Besides listening and understanding, it was really helpful for me to do something. It's really helpful for me to stay home from work. So obviously helpful to wear a mask, wear gloves, talk about it. And subsequently, things have popped up that I continually need to let go of. Just a week ago, I was invited to do a talk for another church about addictions and how the COVID pandemic is impacting our addictions and how we're acting out of our addictions more. What's that all about? And it sounded like a great opportunity, but there were going to be other people there. And it didn't feel safe for Cheryl. Could I let go of that? Yeah, I could let go of that. It's not the end of the world. That was kind of a bigger thing for me. Littler things are me washing my hands. You know, here I am washing my hands, but 10 seconds and I'm done. And Cheryl says, could you wash your hands for 20 seconds? I could hold on to that, or I could let go. Sure, I can wash my hands. So big things, little things, what's getting in the way for you in order to be loved, in order for you to love? And I can hear half of you are thinking this, because I thought this. What about my spouse? Isn't my spouse supposed to let go and love me as well? And I want to say yes, it's both of you. It takes both of you to do this. And might you, who is stronger, take the first step? Might you, who is stronger in this issue? Apostle Paul talks about the weaker brother in Romans chapter 14. Might in this issue, you who feel stronger, might you lead the way? So my hope in these next couple of weeks, as we increasingly face the stress of the pandemic, that you may be able to feel the fist, let go of your need to be right, so that you may be listening, loving, and validating. May God give you the strength and the courage to love better. Amen.